What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop 8A Madness Day 3. No Harrison Tar today because he is calling a softball game for Mercer and Georgia Tech right now. And he's having a lot of fun. Quoted him on Twitter. He called something a wild pickle. So that was a great call. But you can see I'm also joined by my co-host, Daniel Locke, and first timer on the College Loop, Mr. Lance Dawe. You probably already know him from Locked On Kentucky. He's been on Locked On Auburn and, of course, the Auburn Daily Show. He's my Monday co-host, really the host because he really holds my hand as we go through those episodes. But Lance, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, Dylan. How about you?
I'm doing just fine. And Daniel, how you doing?
Couldn't be better. Beautiful Tuesday afternoon on the plains. Feeling pretty good.
Yeah. And talk about something not so beautiful. Auburn has had kind of a rough patch of years in the wide receiver position, but seems like this year maybe the wide receivers look a little bit better. You have players like Camden Brown, Coy Moore, Nick Mardner, Javarius Johnson, Landen King, Tarvaris Dawson, and of course Jay Fair, who is a part of a little bet between Mike G and Lance Dawe. So Lance, you want to make that public at all? That little bet?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to apologize. I'm like 90% sure I was muted whenever I went to speak a second ago. So I want to apologize for that. Second of all, yeah, so Mike G and I, a couple of Auburn practices ago, were sitting out there watching Jay Fair, and Mike G, not just this offseason, but I think since Fair got here, has been kind of hyping him up as a receiver at Auburn. And I said, that I would be willing to make a bet with him about Jay Fair's catches that he gets this season, because I just think that there's so much talent in this receiver room that Fair may be one of the guys that's potentially left behind. And we put it at 10 catches. Is that a little low? Possibly, but I think it's more for the entertainment value. And I think the bet here is the loser of this bet. If Jay Fair has more than 10 catches, then I will have to wear a t-shirt that has Jay Fair's face on the front, and then his stat line on the back. And then if Mike G loses, then he will have to wear the same shirt with whatever statistics he has to 10 catches or less. So, or if he gets 10, then it's a push. So, yeah, that's my bet with Mike G. And worst part about it is, Dylan, it's already looking like Jay Fair. I mean, even with some of these receiver injuries, I mean, he's worked his way up to the second team. And Freeze has said as much about how, it's not necessarily a number one and number two rotation right now. So you could see Jay Fair easily get 20 catches this upcoming season. You could see me with a new shirt.
Yeah, it'll be really funny to see that on the Auburn Daily Show. But out of the wide receiver core, I'm also going to add in Malcolm Johnson and Amari Kelly into the mix as well. Auburn goes pretty deep in that wide receiver room, and a lot of these guys, I want to say, aside from, well, maybe Javarius Johnson's probably the most coveted receiver because he led Auburn in receiving yards last year. A bit of a question mark. Which of these guys are you expecting a big season out of in the first year of the Hugh Freeze, Philip Montgomery era?
Well, I think there's two guys that kind of jump off the page to me because of what Hugh Freeze's track record is and what he's brought in on this roster. So, as you and I have talked about at length, Dylan, on the Auburn Daily Show, just about how Hugh Freeze has really utilized well big, tall, strong framed receivers in the past at Ole Miss. And he had a couple of different guys at Liberty as well that were very talented, that were just bigger bodied guys. And you look at a guy that was already on roster before he got here, Camden Brown, and then you look at a guy like Nick Mardner, somebody that has transferred in and has made his way into the first team, I assume, offense in these pacing drills. Mardner at 6'6". And then you look at Cam Brown at 6'3". I mean, these are two guys that, Dylan, we have been kind of waiting for an emergence at the wide receiver position since I think Seth Williams left in 2020, waiting for one of these bigger outside receivers to kind of, show themselves and show the ability to kind of consistently win some of these 50-50 balls. And I think Nick Mardner could be a guy that you may see Auburn go to. They literally just posted a highlight clip of him scoring a receiving touchdown, going up over DJ James, might I add, who we're probably going to talk about later, and making a catch throw from Robbie Ashford there. But him or Camden Brown, I think, could be somebody that you see not take a big step forward, I think, for sure, from Brown. And then you look at Nick Mardner. I mean, he's already had a 900 plus yard receiving season during his time at Hawaii. Would it necessarily be a bigger step forward? Possibly, because of the change of the stage and obviously it being the SEC and it being more of a competitive environment. But I definitely think you could see Mardner or Camden Brown. I'll go Brown here just because he's somebody that was on the roster and could take a step forward as somebody that we could really see as a breakout player. That could be one word to describe him, but I like what you said there about just taking a big step forward. I think Brown could be somebody that we see his production jump significantly.
Yeah, and you brought up the highlight reel posted by the Auburn social media. Might we add who the quarterback was that threw that little dime to Nick Mardner in the end zone? I believe he's wearing a number 9 jersey, Mr. Ashford, right?
Beautiful throw from Robbie Ashford. And if you'll also notice, so the top comment on Instagram, I went to go check the comments out to see if anybody was gassing up Ashford because I could find very few comments about it. But the top comment is like, did we just get a flag thrown on the offensive line? I went back and looked, and there was a flag thrown as Robbie was making that throw. It was on Batty. I'm like 90% sure it was on Brian Batty in the backfield. So not his fault, but a beautiful throw from Ashford nonetheless.
Yeah, and talk about Nick Mardner a lot. Daniel, I'm gonna have to bring you into this because you had Nick Mardner on your top breakout transfers in February or early January. Actually, you had him at
One of
5.
those, yeah.
And we both had Brian Battie on there as well. But gotta speak about how you kind of called Nick Mardner kind of breaking out before spring practice started. So, what did you see in Nick Mardner that apparently me and Tar didn't see right off the bat?
Yeah. So honestly, I just really liked his frame. 6'5", 6'6", on one of those, I think. I feel like it's been a little while since Auburn's had like a tall receiver like that. I can't remember off the top of my head how tall Seth Williams was.
I think Seth was 6'2". I think the last tallest receiver I can remember would be probably Darvin Adams.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of tall receivers that, like Lance said, can go up and get those 50-50 balls. So just kind of watching some film of him from his time as a Bearcat, I was just like, okay, I like this guy's frame. I really think Coach Freeze and Coach Montgomery can do something here.
Yeah, and a big thing about Nick Mardner is the fact that not only is he a go up and get it type guy, he'll beat you deep as well. He's got that sneaky speed. And you look at it from a playing style, and you look at another team, the TCU Horned Frogs, who also jumped from a 5-7 team to a national championship contending team. Auburn went 5-7 last year. Leave that to the imagination of what I'm insinuating there. Quentin Johnston on that team was 6'6" and around the same weight as Nick Mardner, and has all the same capabilities, potential that Nick Mardner has. Both, I think they're around the same weight, they're around the same speed. And Auburn has not had a guy like that since 2011 when Darvin Adams was on the team, and I believe he was around 6'5", 6'6" as well. I would have counted Sal Cannella, but he was also a tight end, so I'm not going to count him in this comparison. But what Nick Mardner's brought, the film kind of eludes a lot of people because he wasn't utilized like he probably should have been at Cincinnati. But it also comes from the fact that Cincinnati was dealing with what Auburn might be dealing this offseason, and that's poor quarterback play from both Ben Bryant and Evan Prater, who's more of a young guy on Cincinnati. And I don't know if Cincinnati really fixed that. I know this is an Auburn podcast, but Cincinnati probably didn't fix that with Emory Jones going to Ohio. But Nick Mardner, yeah, and I'm going to have to build off what Lance said with Camden Brown. He's been my biggest talking point about when I'm talking about a breakout player. It's Camden Brown, Camden Brown, Camden Brown. Because Auburn has not seen a guy this athletic since Seth Williams. Last year, the best wide receivers Auburn had were slot guys, and you had Javarius Johnson lined up on the outside, and that's why he only had 400 yards receiving. That's because he can't go up and get it. Auburn needs a guy like that, especially with the question marks at quarterback, and it kind of builds onto that. And you look at other guys, Landen King, who we haven't heard a lot of great things about this spring. From the 40 minutes that we get to watch. But yesterday, yeah, a lot of drops from Landen King, a lot of really bad drops that should have been caught. And with Camden Brown and Nick Mardner as your two big guys, you kind of hope Landen King steps it up a little bit throughout A-Day as well, which is coming up. And going down the list, Landen King's Auburn's last tall wide receiver on the depth chart after Nick Mardner and Camden Brown. Because I don't think is Jay Fair. Jay Fair's like what, 6', 6'1",
5'10".
5'10".
5'10".
Yeah.
Well, as a short king myself, I gotta add a couple inches. Me and Wendell Green are both in the 5'11", 6 foot range, if you count our hair, of course. But to kind of move along to another pass catching position, tight ends. This has been a position that Auburn has not really had a really outstanding player at since, I want to say, C.J. Uzama. And even then, I don't think his Auburn tape was all that impressive. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns, is probably his most he's had in a season. And before that, you had 2011 with Philip Lutzenkirchen, who had 5 touchdowns, or he had 7 touchdowns in 2011 and 5 touchdowns in 2010. Auburn's not had that kind of progression from a tight end since 2011. And you see, if you look at the team that just won their second national championship in a row, who's the top receiver on the Georgia Bulldogs?
Brock Bowers.
Brock Bowers, who is a tall, strong, athletic tight end. And if you looked at the NFL as well, all the best teams have one of those guys. The Super Bowl teams was Dallas Goedert versus Travis Kelce. And the NFC Championship, you had George Kittle. The tight end is such an important position nowadays that, especially if you look at Hugh Freeze's past, he almost had a Mackey Award semifinalist with Evan Ingram in one of his last few years there. And you look at this depth chart: Rivaldo Fairweather, Luke Deal, Tyler Fromm, Brandon Frazier, Micah Riley Ducker. People don't really talk about how kind of loaded the tight end room is. I mean, you know what you're going to get with Luke Deal. You know what you're going to get with Tyler Fromm. You've seen these guys. They've been playing since what, 2009, 2009, 2008, somewhere around there is when they got here.
I was about to say, I think about 08 is whenever both of them hopped on the train. So
yeah. And after Shink left, it kind of left a big hole, but picked up with Rivaldo Fairweather. So we heard from Hugh Freeze yesterday, it's probably the most consistent pass catcher that they've seen all spring. So, Lance, I'm going to ask you, what have you been hearing, besides the consistent part, what have you been hearing about Rivaldo Fairweather's utilization in this offense?
Well, I definitely think it's probably going to be.
I believe the internet might have died on Lance's end. That's not good. But whenever we get him back, Daniel, go ahead and talk about Rivaldo Fairweather for a little bit.
Sure. So the tight end transfer out of Florida International University is a 4-star rated transfer per 24/7 Sports, and one of the highest rated transfers that Auburn has in this class. I can't remember exactly where. I want to say he's top 30. So tight end was definitely a position that needed to see some improvement. So, adding Fairweather to the roster really kind of helps achieve that goal. And like you said, just consistent tight end play. It just, tight ends weren't, they're more used for blocking in Gus's system. The first year of Harsin, we saw a lot of John Samuel Shanker targets. This past year, not so much. Shanker was mainly used as a blocker. So just, Freeze has always relied on tight ends. They've been a very big part of his offense. Like, look at guys like Evan Ingram at Ole Miss when Freeze was there. So that's just kind of something that I really feel like that's the first thing Freeze really wanted to do in the portal, was grab a tight end that he believed could really make a difference. And I feel like that's what he's done with Fairweather.
Yeah, I got a there's Lance. His computer may or may not have blue screened. So that's always fun for him as he is joining back in. But yeah, you brought up a great point with Rivaldo Fairweather. Hugh Freeze utilized he utilized tight ends his entire coaching career. And we saw it with Evan Ingram. He just missed out on Dawson Knox becoming a great tight end at Ole Miss. And the way I see it is with Rivaldo Fairweather, he can do it all. He can line up on the outside if you need him to. He's the fastest tight end on the field that Auburn has, and he has the best hands too. I think that he only gets measured out with Micah Riley Ducker's potential, really, because when Iowa wants a tight end, they pretty much get every tight end they want. tight end U for a reason. And Micah Riley Ducker chose Auburn over Iowa. And Rivaldo Fairweather, I think that it gives Micah Riley Ducker a lot of potential growing ability because he can learn under a tight end who has been there before, who has put up the stats. And Lance, I'm gonna let you finish what you were saying. So what have you been hearing about Rivaldo Fairweather? Because we've been he's a huge talking point. Everyone loves him, and he looks like he could be a Mackey winner. Thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think he should be in the conversation. Apologies, because my computer for some reason had a seizure. Yeah, you're looking at a guy like Rivaldo Fairweather. I think the word aggressive is probably the word I want to stick with here whenever it comes to not just talking about him as a pass catcher for the Tigers, but I also think in terms of volume, we're going to see Auburn aggressively pursue Rivaldo Fairweather. I think from here on out in the Hugh Freeze era, you've been talking about all these different tight ends still on the roster. You've got guys like Brandon Frazier, who is entering his senior season, Mike Riley Ducker, who's going to be here for years to come. Excuse me. From here on out, I think you're going to see the Tigers consistently have not it's no longer going to be a safety valve. I think at tight end. I think that's a word that John Samuel Schenker was described as, or a term that was used to describe John Samuel Schenker was a safety valve, somebody Auburn could rely on. I think it's going to become not necessarily the focal point, but certainly more of a focal point of Hugh Freeze offenses for the Tigers for years to come. And Rivaldo Fairweather, I think in terms of catches, I think in terms of yards, in terms of touchdowns, I think he's going to be probably the biggest threat Auburn has had at tight end, maybe ever. As you mentioned there, potential Mackey Award winner. If Auburn truly does feel like they need some help with this receiver core, because Freeze has said as much. He said, the receivers still have a really long way to go. They're starting to still figure out how to do certain things when it comes to alignment and spacing. They're trying to get this new system installed and apparently it's taking a little bit longer than they expected it to. So guys like Rivaldo Fairweather for now, guys like Micah Riley Ducker in the future, and then whoever Auburn maybe wants to bring in, maybe I believe Martavis Collins, who is currently committed to Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken. He's a guy that Auburn is still pursuing heavily at tight end. That could be a guy that you see in the future. So this is not necessarily going to be, like you said, for Iowa. It's a pipeline place for tight ends. But Auburn under Hugh Freeze will have guys like Rivaldo Fairweather step up consistently for years to come. And for this season, asking what he can do for the Tigers, I think he can be. I think he could be somebody that leads the team in catches. And I don't really think that that's like a hot take at this point, to be honest with you, with the way that he's been discussed.
I mean, if you look at it from a positional standpoint, tight ends are usually seen as a safety valve for most quarterbacks, especially of the dual threat variety. And it looks like under the Hugh Freeze system, you are going to have two dual threat guys. We've talked about how Holden Geriner can make those plays with his legs. And that was something that we thought was going to be a little bit of a stretch with him, as if can he get out of the pocket? Can he can he run the ball if he needs to do that? Well, Robbie Ashford, I think Auburn would have been helped a little bit more if he was given a safety valve in a tight end. Because you look at keep going to the NFL, because the NFL is so tight end heavy. When Patrick Mahomes is running around, who is he looking for? He's looking for Kelsey. Lamar Jackson, same thing with him. He's looking for Mark Andrews. And it's going to go on for years to come, because the tight ends is such an important position nowadays that right now Auburn is behind a lot of other teams. I don't want to say that Cameron Latu is this all-time great tight end, but he really helped Bryce Young become Bryce Young. He helped him get that Heisman. And when a quarterback is looking around, can't find an open guy anywhere, the tight ends are usually where you want to go with that. And Rivaldo Fairweather gives you that. And he also gives you that break tackle ability. He's an agile guy. He's fast. I don't think that you could ask for a better pickup in the transfer portal at that position than what you got with Rivaldo Fairweather. And
yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Latu. I pulled up his game logs from this past season just to kind of emphasize your point here. In their biggest games last season, Latu was a favorite target of Bryce Young. Against Tennessee, he had a season high 6 catches. Against Texas, he had 4. Against LSU, he had 3 for 50 yards. Against Kansas State in the bowl game, he had 5 for 54 yards and a touchdown. Whenever Alabama needed a safety valve, whenever Young needed somebody to kind of be there as that all reliable, Latu stepped up. Fairweather looks in this offense, I think you'll see similar things for whoever's under center. Like you said, if it's Garner, if it's Ashford, if it's somebody in the portal, I think Auburn will find themselves being very thankful that they were able to land Fairweather in through the transfer portal this season. I definitely think he's going to contribute, and I don't want to say win some games for Auburn, but he's definitely going to keep them in them.
Oh, for sure. And just to add a little quote graphic for me. Give me your predicted stat line. It could be just yards and touchdowns for Rivaldo Fairweather.
Oh yeah, well I definitely think. Let's see, you're thinking 30-ish receptions just on average for like a good tight end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say 35 receptions minimum for Fairweather this season. I think that's a fair place to put him. I'll say 500 plus yards. And you may say that's a hot take. No receiver on Auburn's roster eclipsed 500 last year. So it'd be something that they haven't seen since 2020. So yeah, I'll say 500 yards easy. And then touchdowns. Man, you haven't really seen any Auburn tight end get involved with touchdowns. I'll say 8. I'll say 8 plus. I think this kid will be somebody that you rely on in all parts of the field. There was this clip. I meant to send it to you, Dylan. This kid doesn't have just like safety valve hands and somebody that maybe you can go to in the red zone, this, that, and the other. This kid's got speed. There was one play at FIU last season where he was thrown a ball on either some type of tight post or a seam, and he caught it over the shoulder and he was gone. It was FIU's longest play of the year last season. It's some legitimate speed that he's got. So I definitely think that Auburn's got a weapon there that they can utilize in a lot of different ways. You notice what Hugh Freeze said in the press conference, Dylan. He said that he's probably this A-Day not going to be showing a lot of things that Auburn's really good at or potentially really good at that they're going to utilize this fall. If we don't see Fairweather have a crazy game in the spring game, maybe that's a good thing. I'll just say that. Maybe that's a good thing.
I mean, yeah, you're right. If he said don't expect too much from A-Day, I expect that means Rivaldo Fairweather won't be on the field because from what you said, they're nowhere where they want to be on both sides of the ball. But Daniel, what do you think about Rivaldo Fairweather? What's the stat line going to be in 2023?
I guess just kind of like good, 30, 35, 40 on the high side receptions. Sprinkle in 4 or 5 touchdowns and yards. I don't know, maybe like 400 or 500, if that math adds up. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go a nice 32 receptions for about, I'm going to get a little specific, 495 yards, and I'm going to go 6 touchdowns, which would be the best tight end season out of everything we just said. We've all predicted him to have the best tight end season Auburn has seen since Philip Lutzenkirchen.
Easy. I think
that is high praise.
Yeah, man.
I don't think anyone gets as much love or as Philip Lutzenkirchen did in his time. And rest in peace to him. He gave me some of my happiest days as an Auburn fan. But sort of going to move on from the pass catchers to the pass defenders, this DB room. We talk about how the wide receiver room full of possible breakout players, a bunch of guys who have a lot of potential, who Auburn fans and the coaches don't really know what they have in those receivers. But you look over to the defense side of the ball, guys covering these guys, defensive back, both corner and safeties, loaded from head to toe, loaded. You have DJ James, Nehemiah Pritchett both returning, who would have gotten drafted this season, this draft. Kyan Lee, who has been popping off as a true freshman. Jalen Simpson, who's returned. Keontae Scott. Sadly, JD Rim is injured and out for the spring. But safety-wise, Donovan Kaufman, Caden Bridges, Caleb Wooten, Austin Osbury, Marquise Gilbert, Craig McDonald, and Zion Puckett has returned as well. So, Lance, what can we expect to see from this defensive back room under Ron Roberts' defense?
I'm glad that you mentioned Rod Roberts and his scheme here, because I think something that has been the point of emphasis for me, and then a point of emphasis for a lot of different people talking about this scheme, is that, well, Ron Roberts at Baylor was good at 2 things that Auburn really struggled with last year, and that was stopping the run and creating turnovers. So I think that the expectation is, well, Auburn is going to therefore significantly improve either in one or both of those categories, and likely people are excited about what's going to go on with its front 7. I don't think it's been discussed enough just how good this secondary could be underneath Wesley McGriff in this Ron Roberts system. Do I think Ron Roberts is the most elite defensive coordinator out there? No. But do I think that he has the ability to take this talent and to make it really, really good at what it used to be under Kevin Steele? Absolutely. Like you mentioned, I think that this is a great blend of experience and newcomer talent. You look at guys like Kayan Lee, who you mentioned, Harrison Tarr here on the College Loop, absolutely adores. Very excited about him. I am ecstatic about what he could bring to the Tigers for years to come. Like you mentioned as well, DJ James, Nehemiah Pritchett, two senior cornerbacks that are back for the Tigers. Jalen Simpson, who could end up playing a little bit more safety as well this year, also a senior. Donovan Kaufman's back. Zion Puckett's back. Marquise Gilbert is somebody that's apparently emerging as some type of box safety for the Tigers. I mean, they've got weapons. They've got weapons for this year, and then I think they've got weapons for years to come. Also, you mentioned you talk about the cornerbacks in the future. Next year's class, Amon Lane and Jaden Lewis, two four-star corners that have already been added to this new 2024 cycle. So Auburn in the defensive backfield for seasons to come, I think will be pretty set if they continue to do what they have been doing both on the recruiting trail now and previous years. But yeah, you look at last year's team. I mean, statistically, it's one of Auburn's better secondaries that they've had. They were 10th in the SEC in yards, passing yards per game. But I think they were really solid overall in yards per attempt. I believe they were tied for 4th there. Completion percentage is also an area that they were solid in. It's about creating those turnovers. And then I think the yards per play, not giving up those chunk plays, the explosive plays, which in turn has to do with how your defensive line gets pressure. That was an occasional problem last season. So this secondary, they've got the pieces. DJ James should be one of the, if not the best pro prospect that Auburn has on roster for next year. Maybe outside of a couple different pieces. I'm sure that's a conversation you guys will have both before and after the season here on the College Loop. But DJ James and then Pritchett, who I think has the ability to take a step forward and kind of improve upon what has been a solid but not elite career. So yeah, absolutely. Auburn's got the pieces. They've got depth. This may be the best position group on roster. You could probably talk me into a couple of other places, but I think that this is easily identified as a strength, even for a team that finished 5-7 last year heading into this season.
Jarquez Hunter, Damari Alston, Jeremiah Cobb might have a little something to say about that too.
What I was about to say is the running back room is the only other one that I can think that has like true competition with the secondary. I mean, they're both very solid.
And you bring up Nehemiah Pritchett, yeah, I think he's one of those players that really stepped up after the firing of Brian Harsin. I think he's one of those players that when you look at people who stepped up after when Cadillac started his interim head coaching career, Nehemiah Pritchett is one of those top guys that he locked down defenders and what he struggled in the first half of that season. And you look at Ron Roberts' stats at Baylor in 2019. I looked it up. 17 interceptions from that defense in 2019 for the Baylor Bears. And Auburn probably had, I think, 2 interceptions last year, 2 or 3. But it took, I think, well, I know 2 for a fact. Owen Papo and Derek Hall got those 2, and I don't think the defensive backs really put up that much right after that. But I look at it from the standpoint of Baylor's defense in 2019 was so aggressive up front and in the back half too that it was able to make quarterbacks look stupid. You try to make a throw over to the left side, and I believe what's his name, Grayland Arnold, who is now with the Houston Texans, had 6 interceptions that season. And I talk about with Zach Blackerby. I talk about with Tar. When I look at DJ James and Nehemiah Pritchett, I see the next coming of Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean. And you look at DJ James more refined as a man guy. I see Carlton Davis a lot in that. And yep. Jamel Dean was more of the building block. He's on the other side of Carlton Davis, not as great as Carlton Davis was, but whenever he plays his best, he's unstoppable, or I guess immovable is the word for defense. Sure. But yeah, when I look at DJ James and Nehemiah Pritchett, I see Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean 2.0 right there. And it just goes deeper than that. Kyan Lee has been playing out of his mind. And it's crazy to think about. I don't think Auburn's ever had a true freshman defensive back really step up like Kyan Lee has this spring. Whenever you think about an Auburn defensive back as a freshman, you're usually looking upon them like, oh, well, he gives up a lot of yards, but he's a freshman. He's got potential. And you look at it, but Kyan Lee is different. And when Harrison Tarr found out we got him, he was over the moon. And we found out why. Tarr called it. And we've been saying all along, Kyan Lee is going to be a stud. And I'm assuming he's more of an outside guy, but
Yep.
What does the dream rotation look like in a 4-2-5 defense? So you have the three defensive linemen, the jack linebacker, the two linebackers in the middle, and then you have your 5 defensive backs with 3 corners, 2 safeties. What does the dream rotation look like back there?
Over here staring at my complete guide to the hybrid 4-2-5 book that I have sitting over here. That's not even a bit. I'm dead serious. I do love the scheme that Ron Roberts is going to run. The dream rotation here, I think it does start with DJ James and Nehemiah Pritchett on the outside there. If you're looking inside at safety, I think Donovan Kaufman. And then to be completely honest with you, Jalen Simpson is somebody that I want to see act more or become more involved in the rotation there at safety. The Tigers are just so strong at outside corner that I think giving an opportunity to Kyan Lee to kind of be that cornerback number 3 will definitely be awesome. Because JD Rim, like you mentioned, is injured. Lee has been that cornerback number 3 through spring. He is more of an outside guy. Giving him that third spot, letting Marquise Gilbert maybe be a backup safety that you're looking at, that you're hoping will continue to develop along as he has so far this spring. Austin Osbury and Zion Puckett and Caden Bridges. I'm not quite sure what that rotation between those 3 guys will look like as the backup safeties, but I can only imagine that they'll get a little bit of run as well. The thing that I keep coming back to, though, Dylan, with Kyan Lee, and the reason why I'm so excited about him, and I think that he will find his way into this rotation and make an impact for the Tigers. You notice guys like Carlton Davis in the past, whenever they came into Auburn, did you notice what was kind of funny about their freshman season is that they didn't have the same number that they finished their career with. Carlton Davis, if I'm not mistaken, he came in as like number 38 or something weird in his freshman, and they had to earn 36. That. Right, 36. They had to earn that. They had to get to that point. And there are a couple of cornerbacks that are currently slipping my mind that had the same thing happen to him. Kyan Lee came in day 1 and got number 3. He got number 3. Which is a pretty highly coveted number, I would argue. So there's a lot of respect I think this coaching staff has for this kid, just as far as what his playmaking ability could be coming out of high school. And man, look at him out there. He's got the thick arm sleeve on. He looks comfortable in what he's doing. He looks confident, and that's what you want out of your DBs, man. So yeah, I think it's DJ James, Nehemiah Pritchett, Donovan Kaufman, Jalen Simpson potentially as your other safety there. And then Kyan Lee is your cornerback number 3. That's my dream rotation, man. And then everybody behind them, not to say that they're bad or anything, but they're just adding on to what is already very, very solid depth.
Yeah. And Daniel, when we talk about Kyan Lee, we talk about him a lot on this show, and you know that we do. If we had a nickel for every time we heard Kyan Lee on this show, we'd be pretty daggone rich. So what have you been thinking about Kyan Lee since his entrance on the Plains?
I've been impressed. He looks good. He looks like he knows what he's doing. Like Lance said, he's number 3. As Coach Prime said, you don't get a single digit unless you're that guy. So evidently someone thinks he's that guy, which kind of just validates what we've been saying on the College Loop since our first show 2 days before Christmas, or 3, one of those 2. Anyway, that's besides the point. Yeah, Kyan Lee's going to be good. And I really can't wait to watch him.
Yeah. And what other defensive backs are you excited to see in 2023, Daniel?
That's a good question.
Besides DJ James and Nehemiah Pritchett, I'm going to go and take those away from you because there's 2 easy answers.
I don't have the – hold on. While I'm pulling those up, just very, very excited for Kyan Lee as well as Keontae Scott. That's going to be a good one. JD Rhyme. I know he's hurt right now, but he'll be back soon enough, and they're going to make a difference, and they're going to be much improved from what we saw last year.
Yeah, and I just Lance just cut out again, so might have to. Hopefully, he gets back before the show ends because we only got like a few more minutes. But yeah, you look at other guys. Keontae Scott. Hopefully, he steps up more in the pass coverage room because when you look at his other position that he was playing last season, it was kick returner, punt returner, and he kind of had a couple bad stretches with that. And looking at the safety room, I've been hearing some good words about a lot of these guys. Caleb Wooden, the other Wooden brother, the other one going to the NFL. Caden Bridges has been getting some positive reimbursement. Haven't heard a lot about Austin Osbury or Zion Puckett, but I've heard Craig McDonald, the transfer from, I believe, Iowa last season, has been kind of picking it up after he missed most of last season, or he at least didn't play. But Lance, you in here?
Yeah, man, I'm sorry, man. This is I am perplexed by what is going on with my computer. This is I've literally never had to do this before.
You're all good. But you know what, Lance, we're gonna, before the computer cuts off again, I'm gonna let you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you, love you, support you, read your stuff, all that jazz.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Apologies for the way this has gone today. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDaw_. You can also follow all of my written work over at auburndaily.com. You can check out the Auburn Daily Show where Dylan and I host it on Mondays. You can check that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. You can also check out the Locked On Kentucky podcast if you hate yourself as an Auburn fan. That is wherever you get your podcast. I don't really know why you would want to go check out Kentucky basketball, but hey, listen, sometimes we take it upon ourselves to make some jokes with and about the Auburn Tigers. So yeah, make sure you check us out there.
All right. And Daniel, go ahead.
Written work, literally 6 outlets. Don't have time to go into them all. Twitter at Daniel J. Locke.
And I'm Dylan Larck at your boy the Tank on Twitter. It's at YABOY the Tank. And we're about to get cut off in a little bit. But with all that being said, we don't have a MySpace, but follow us literally everywhere else. And this has been the College Loop 8A Madness Day 3.